So good evening, everybody. And as a public service announcement of PSA is that for the next 2 weeks, we will not be holding Sha'ar. I'm going to be out of the country, but we will return on Tuesday, March 5th at 7:30 again. As is our custom and our practice, we dedicate the zchut of our learning to the captives, to the Chatufim, who are still being held in Gaza. Baruch Hashem, there were 2 that got brought home the other day. May they all be returned to their families, safe and sound and alive. We are also helping that the zchut of our learning goes to the cholim and the pitzuim, and specifically, we are learning in the zchut of Rusbat Bela, who is undergoing surgery today. If anybody has a dedication that you would like in terms of dedicating the learning, please let me know. We are also dedicating the learning that we do for the safety of our HaElohim and for the victory over modern-day Amalek. I don't know if you have seen it, but there are many signs around that are selling Oznei Sinwar as opposed to Oznei Haman. And so I think that is great and appropriate. All right. So we continue the dialogue that we have had between the Sefel and the Neshama, with the Sefel taking the role of teacher, physician, therapist, to help the Neshama puzzle out how best to serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu in this world. The goal of tonight is to complete this Sha'ar, the 3rd of 10, Sha'ar Avodat Elokim, and to begin next time with the 4th Sha'ar, Sha'ar HaBitachon. I won't translate it because we will spend a lot of time trying to figure out what that word means exactly. So since this Sha'ar, since a given Sha'ar we have found takes between 2 to 5 shiurim, which is about 2 to 5 hours to cover, it's easy to lose track of exactly what's in it. So I think it's worthwhile to kind of just review what we have done at a very high level in this Sha'ar of Avodat Elokim, the gate of serving God. So we covered actually quite a lot of serious topics. We established the requirement that each and every individual has an obligation to serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu out of a logical recognition of all the brachot that we receive from him. And while this is innate in each of us to do, we also learn that this really requires a hitorarut, strengthening and awakening, so that we can serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu in the way that it should. And we define this awakening both in terms of the external rational awakening, which we said was driven by our observance of the Torah, and the subsequent emotional awakening that we find in our hearts or in our nishamot. And we learned the rule of thumb that we should follow is that our service of the Kodesh Baruch Hu should be commensurate with the amount of brachot that we receive. And since those are seemingly infinite, we spent time last week talking about what is the minimum requirement in terms of how we should serve him. And we set out criteria in terms of how we can ensure that our motives and our motivations to serve God is pure, meaning we're not doing it just for the reward. And we spent time talking about free will and predetermination. That's how we ended it up. And the Neshama's question was, how can I serve God and receive a reward if everything is predetermined? And he pointed out machloket among our rabbis, and we went through 3 different options, meaning God determines everything, God leaves it to us, or it's a mix of both. And the Sefel, the Chovot HaLevavot, if you remember, said, I don't know. I can't figure it out. Don't waste your time on it. Act as if you are in control of everything, and daven as if the Kodesh Baruch Hu is in control of everything. And the Neshama answered by saying, you have comforted me in having me give up the hope of ever grasping this subject because of its subtlety and depth, which I think is a very nice way to answer it, to say, I've got other things to think about. This is not something I'm going to be able to resolve. So, ad kan. So the discussion up until now is focused on the what and the how, meaning what are we supposed to do to serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and how? What should we be thinking? How should we be feeling? And included in that are things that we need to overcome in order for us to have a complete service to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. But really, there is a more fundamental question that needs to be asked, and this is the question why. Why are we here? What is our purpose on earth? And what is the purpose of serving the Kodesh Baruch Hu in the first place? So the Neshama asks the following question. This is source 2. Reveal to me the secret of my existence in this world, its aim and purpose, and give me, as well as you can, and in brief, some conception of the form of compulsion in divine justice. Right, so why was I created? What am I supposed to do now that I am here? And what are the rules I need to follow?
Who's asking Neshama?
This is the Neshama. Neshama is asking the Sechel. And he's saying, and she's saying, and be brief. Right? So it brings to mind the story of the guy who approached Hillel Erev Shabbos, where he says, convert me, I will convert, if you teach me the entire Torah standing on one leg. Right? If you look at source 3, Shuv Maseh B'goy Echad Sheba Lifnei Shammai. The story starts out that he comes in front of Shammai. Amar lo, he says, Gareini al minat, I will convert on the condition shetalmideni kol haTorah kula kishe'ani omed al regel echad. As long as I'm standing on one leg, teach me the entire Torah. Dakfu ba'amat habinyan biyado. He was holding some sort of tool, some sort of building tool, and he pushed him away because it's a chutzpahdik question, and he had no patience for it. Ba'al lifnei Hillel, he came in front of Hillel, Garei. And Hillel converted him. Why? Amar lo, de'aleh sani lechavrach lo ta'avit. Whatever is hateful to your neighbor, to your friend, don't do. Zuhi kol haTorah kula. This is the essence of the entire Torah. Ve'idech perushahu. Everything else are commentaries on how to get to that level. And that's usually when they stop quoting this midrash. But the rest of the midrash goes, Zil Gemor. In other words, go learn it. Right? It's not enough just to give you a principle, but you need to spend the time. So it might seem to be a chutzpahdik question, but I really don't think it is. Right? The question is, can you give me a direction or a general principle that will help guide me to where I'm going? So let me give you an example. If somebody is told they're going on a trip, without going into the details of all of the arrangements that are going on, it's not out of the question to ask, where exactly are we going? Or without going into all of the itinerary, right, you can ask, in general, what are we going to be doing there? So again, as we did with free will and predetermination, there are many approaches to answer this question, all of which but one are outside the scope of this shiur. And so we're just going to present the idea of Ibn Pekuda, what he says to the Neshama. So if you look at source 4, the secret of your being is that the Creator created you out of nothing. In common with all spiritual beings that he created, he wanted to exalt you and elevate you to the high degree of his treasured ones, the chosen and pure, who are among those close to the light of his glory, to bestow favor and grace upon you. There's a lot to unpack here, right? But it's worth going slowly and taking it one step at a time. So first of all, our rabbis tell us that the Kadosh Baruch Hu created two ethereal beings. He created man and he created angels. Now you're going to tell me that man is really only half ethereal because of our physicality, our physical being. Hold that question and we will get to it in a minute. But our true essence, the true creations, are our neshamot, right? And the body, as we will see in a moment, is here for a specific purpose. So he created the angels before man. He created the angels first. Now there's a dispute in the Medrash between Rabbi Yochanan, who believed that it happened on day 2 of creation, and Rabbi Hanina, who believed it was on day 5, but it doesn't really matter. He created angels first. And the purpose of angels are to be shlichim for the Kadosh Baruch Hu. They are messengers of God. And once they fulfill their task, they either disappear or they're transformed into something else. The Sechel is telling the Neshama that she started out on par with the angels, or at a minimum, was created in the same process as the Malachim. But his goal for us is different than for the angels. It is actually loftier for us than for the Malachim. He wants our neshamot to attain a higher level of Kedusha over the Malachim. So this higher level of Kedusha is defined as our ability to get close to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the Kabbalah says, and I'm just repeating, right? Don't ask me to explain, because I don't know. But the Kabbalah tells us that it is a joining with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It is becoming one. We have an idea that we talk about Veikut Hashem, that we cling to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? And he wants this to happen, and our neshamot want this to happen. This ability to become one with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, prior to us being able to do that, he needed to refine us in some way. And to do this, he put us through a sort of crucible, a sort of series of tests. And he wanted us to change. He wanted the neshamot to change so that we become higher to the angels. And this process of change is based on a series of tests that he gives us. So according to this approach, this is why the Kadosh Baruch Hu created the physicality for man. He created our guf, he created our body to give the neshama a place, an experience, to be able to make difficult decisions and to refine itself. And if we make the right choices, it will be refined. And I'm using the word refined like we refine precious metals. Well, we get rid of all, what's it called, the dross, the things that need to be gone. And our souls will, in the end, be able to come even closer to the Borei Olam, even like we said, higher than the Malachim. We see this idea that a neshamot, meaning man, is the Kadosh Baruch Hu's ultimate and favorite creation. The Gemara in Masechet Chulin, if you look at source 5, says specifically that we, and here they're talking about the Jews, are dearer to the Borei Olam than the angels. Meisvei, this is connected to something else. It says, Chavivin Yisrael lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yoter mimalchei hasharet. That the Israel is more dear, is more important, is more valued by the Kadosh Baruch Hu than even the angels. And there's another proof that at the end of the day, the plan is for us to be united with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's another Gemara at the end of Masechet Tanit that describes the following scene. Amar Ula Berei, right? Ula said, Ula of the city of Berei said in the name of Rebbe Eliezer, Atid, in the future, that means that when we are all in Olam Emet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'asot machol l'tzadikim. The Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to create a circle. Some say it's a circle dance of all the tzadikim. V'hu yoshe beinehem began Eden. And he is going to sit amongst, certainly you, maybe me, in Gan Eden. V'kol echad ve'echad mar'eh etzba'o. And everybody is going to point at the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Sheneh Amar, and it brings a quote. It brings a quote from Yeshaya. So it is this sense. Now, I can't tell you what this means, right? Because I can't. But I can tell you that there is this sense that at the end, we are going to be intimate, and those are the words that the Zohar uses, with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I also don't want to gloss over an idea that the Seichel brings, that the neshama, at the end of the day, really doesn't belong here. He belongs in the upper realms, right? And we're just passing through this world to eventually go back home where we came from. But we need to go back home transformed. This world is a test, a refining process, passageway. The famous Mishnah in Masechet Avot, if you look at source 7, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Halem hazeh domeh leprosdor. This world is like a hallway, bifnei ha'olam haba, before the world to come. It says, Hataken atzmecha beprosdor, get yourself ready in the prosdor, kedei shetikanes letraklin, so you can go into the traklin, into the great hall. Now, if you read this through the eyes of the Chovot HaLevavot, we would look at it and say that this world is not a passage from one world to the next, but it is a way for us to get home to where we want to be, where our neshamot long to be. And we have, in many places, a very, very famous idea that's presented in the Gemara, Zagadata, that speaking mostly about us as a people, that the king exiles his son to the village as a way for him to grow and to learn. And the villager and the prince forgets he's a king or a prince, and he thinks he's a villager. And when the Kadosh Baruch Hu comes to collect them, he doesn't want to go back because he doesn't understand that this was all a test. Now, those midrashim usually refer to us who have sinned to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and when he wants us back, we say, no, we're happy being wood choppers here. And they go, no, you're royalty. But you can take that same idea and apply it to the Shamot, that we are here, and sometimes we forget why it is we hear. So I understand that that this seems very all ethereal and very hard to relate to. But that might be part of the problem, right? If you think about it. Part of the test is we should find a way to relate to this, find a way to really believe this. Okay, we'll get to that. So the next obvious question that the neshama asked is, how do I do that? How do I refine myself so I can not only go back home, but that I can have a seat in this circle? So the Seichel answers, but you will only be worthy of this favor when 3 conditions have been met. Meaning, here is what you need to do while you are here, while we are here. So, source 9, he says, the first is the removal of the veil of folly that hangs over you, so you may be enlightened by the knowledge of him. In other words, you have to be aware that of what is really going on in this world and what your purpose is. Second, that you be tried and tested whether you will choose to serve him or rebel against him, meaning you need to be able to refine yourself if you're going to be successful. And the third is you will be disciplined in this world by bearing patiently the burden of his service in order that he raise you to the degree of the higher beings, the patient ones. Right? So that you have to come and become disciplined so that we can move on. So, like I said, to the extent that this is hard for us to truly believe, and it sounds very mystical, and it probably doesn't resonate with us and with our Western kind of logical minds, I can hear your eyes rolling up to the top of your heads. But that is the challenge that is set out in front of us. And once we overcome this hurdle, then the reason for our experiences in our lives and what we're supposed to do begin to take shape, right? The only question that will remain is, are we going to be successful or are we not going to be successful? Sure.
And it's probably a stupid question.
Okay.
Not thinking the whole thing through. But is this not in contradiction to what Yom Kippur represents, how we get dressed up in white like the angels and with like...
So tell me why you would think it would not be connected.
Contradiction, I think. Teaching that, that we're striving to be like them. But then, on the other hand, you said that we are higher than them.
So here's what I would say. I don't see a contradiction. Right now, if you take this, we were created on par through the same process as the Malachim. We were sent down here, which would lower us in the Madrega, because we are now half Rufani, half physical. Correct. In this world, in this place. That's how we are and who we are. On Yom Kippur, we want to demonstrate that we can be like the Malachim. And we dress like the Malachim. And we don't eat like the Malachim don't eat. And we stand with our feet together. There are midrashim that angels only have 1 foot. Right? To demonstrate that we really are exalted, elevated beings, despite appearances. So I'm not sure I would see it as a contradiction. I would see it as aspirational at this point, that this is where we're going to go. And if that is correct, then it's exactly what the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us, right? That aspirationally, that's where we want to be. And one day of the year, I'm not going to say we pretend, but we demonstrate that that's where we want to be.
We dedicate that day in order to strive.
Yes, we dedicate that day to show that we are striving to be so. Very good. I like that. I should have written it down here. So the Sefer tells us that the Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't throw us down here unaided. That we have lots of things on our side to help us be successful, right? And in fact, he has given us formidable tools to assist us in our challenge. And that is, believe it or not, the physicality that we have. Because remember, we are here in this physical world to make choices and to refine our neshamot. So the Sefer goes on to say that the Kadosh Baruch Hu has built a palace around our neshamot to aid it and to protect it. And obviously this palace, it calls it a Hechal, refers to the body. And he goes into great anatomical detail, which I will spare you all, to itemize every role that every physical part of the body plays in its spiritual capacity. But I do want to point out 2 areas that will suffice what he means. So, source 10. In this palace, he opened for you 5 gates to the external world, and from among his trusted servants appointed 5 keepers of the gates. The gates are the instruments of the senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the hands. The gatekeepers are the 5 senses which employ them: the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the sense of touch, through which you can arrive at all that is useful to you in the world. In other words, if you have these 5 senses, you can navigate in this world and you can see what is good and what is not. So in short, he goes on, he has given us the tools to discern, and these tools which are at our disposal can and should be used to discern what we should and should not be doing in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, we say in Parsha Shoftim, where we say Shoftim v'shotrim tasu lecha, right? You should make officers and judges for you in the Torah. We understand that on one level as analogies to making sure that we use our senses and we use our body in a way that's appropriate. Before Yom Kippur, there is a prayer that we say, which is called Tefillah Zaka. And it details all the things that we should be doing with our body and perhaps all the things that we're not doing or how we're misusing it or using it for other purposes. Now, tools are good, but tools in and of itself are not sufficient. So he says that he has given us on top of these tools advisors that are part of the tests that we are given. So source 11, he then provided you with two advisors. The first is the intellect, which instructs you in God's ways. The second advisor is your baser instincts, which misguides you, entices you to things through which you arouse the anger of God, your creator. So if you grew up watching cartoons, right, there is usually a good angel that sits on one shoulder and a bad angel sits on another. So we have within ourselves, right, we would call them Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara, that force us in one direction or the other. Not only are they advisors, but the Chovot HaLevavot goes on. It says they're also scorekeepers. Of these two scribes, the first records your good deeds. That's obviously the Yetzer HaTov, whether done secretly or openly, internally or externally, through the offices of any of these already mentioned, meaning the parts of the body. The second scribe records the bad deeds in the same way as we have stated in regard to the good deeds. Now, we have in many, many places in the Gemara, and Chazal tell us that everything we do is recorded. So if you look at source 13 in Masefet Tanit, it says Tzadik v'Yasharhu. It's talking about a specific pasuk, Amru, that the sages say, Bishat pitirato shel Adam lebeit olamo. At the time when somebody is niftar, Kol Masav Niftarim Lifanav. All of his deeds are brought in front of him, Rimlo, and they say there, Kach v'kach asita b'makom ploni b'yom ploni. You did this on this day, right, at this time. Amar lo, and you're going to say yes. V'yom rimlo, and I guess it's the Malachim are going to say, Chatom, sign. I want you to validate and accept responsibility. V'chotem, and you sign it. And then it brings a couple of a citation, and it says v'lo od, and not only that, ella shematzdik alav et hadin. You're going to say to these judges that you are absolutely right, and say that you have judged me appropriately. Now, I heard a story actually this week in Sha'ar. I attended Sha'ar, and now I have adopted the policy of Rabbi David Orlovsky. I mentioned it last week. Rabbi David Orlovsky says that when he hears a story that he likes, he just repeats it. He spends no time validating it if it's true or not. So I'm just going to give you the story because it's a great story. Okay? And you can take it with as many grains of salt as you want. There was a woman who was undergoing brain surgery. And in the middle of the brain surgery, the surgeon touched something, nicked something, moved something, and the woman started to sing an aria from an Italian opera. When she recovered, she met with the doctor. Baruch Hashem, the operation was a success. He asked her about it. He said, "Are you an opera fan?" And she said, "No." He said, "Do you speak Italian?" He says, "No." And he explained to her what had happened during the operation. And she remembered as a girl, she had visited with her family La Scala. It was the only time she was at opera, but she remembered it. We record everything. Everything we do is recorded in this hard drive. And I guess what they'll do is unplug the hard drive and they'll say, "Okay, let's see what goes on." And the Mishnah in Avot tells us, right? We don't have to wait for the story. If you think about three things, you're not going to sin. Know what's above you, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ayin roveh ve'ozen shoma'at, an eye that sees and an ear that hears. V'kol ma'asecha b'sefer nichtivin. And everything that you have done is written in the book. Now, it may be that it's written here. Who knows? So, the stage has been set for us, right? If we think about it, we have been given the tools and we have been given the advisors to be successful, even if it appears that it would be a challenge. And what we need instruction. So the Chovot HaLevavot, if you look in source 15, in the voice of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Just like a sports coach would say to his team before they got onto the field, giving them the charge, he says the following. Now, this is in the voice of the Ribono Shel HaOlam. Whatever I have put into your hands in this world and place under your control must not entice you, since none of them can contribute anything to your essential being, nor take anything from it, nor will you obtain from any of them either pleasure or pain, for they are only things that are incidentally affect your body, externally or internally. None of them is necessary for you. The relation to you is that of an embryonic sac, a placenta, to the newborn baby, or the eggshell to the hatch chick. Okay, so I happen to like this image that he brings, right? Either in terms of a placenta or an eggshell. And I like it for two reasons. One is that they are something that is essential to us, but of temporary value, right? You can't live without having had a placenta. A chicken can't be born without an egg. But once you're born, it's of no value, right? So it's critical with a specific utility. But the truth is there are lots of other things that are critical but temporary, and he could have used a lot of these examples. But the reason I like it is both of these have to do with birth. So the image underneath it may be that we are here, right, to allow us to be born for our ultimate purpose, right, our ultimate passage home. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu goes on to tell us that the key to our success is to keep our eyes on the prize. If you look at source 16, you will understand and comprehend my intention towards you and the benefit which I have bestowed upon you, and you choose my service and keep far from rebelling against me in the management of everything over which I have given you control. Right? If you do what you're supposed to do, then I will raise you to the highest of the degrees attained by me, my elect and favored ones. I will draw you closer to my mercy and love and enfold you with radiance of my glory. But if you choose to rebel against me, I will punish you with a severe punishment and afflict you with prolonged affliction. In other words, I have set you up for success. And if you keep your eye on the prize, that I want to bring you back, then everything you do here is going to be geared with that in mind. And if we know that that's where we're headed, and that's where we want to go, and that's what's called winning the game, then it makes it easier for us to make those choices here. Now, in the end, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, if you get stuck, listen to the coaches I sent you, and that's the sechel, right? In this context, right, it's probably better translated not as the intellect, but as our consciences. And he says our consciences will tell you the right way of serving me, not me, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he then says that the reprehensible qualities will be transformed into praiseworthy ones. In other words, if we do that, even things that are reprehensible, we have to figure out what that means, will be treated as if there was a foot, as if they were merits. Like a doctor, he says, he actually uses this example. He says, like a doctor will sometimes prescribe poison for its medicinal purposes. So if we were going to translate this, think about chemotherapy, right? Chemotherapy is simply poison for positive effects. In the end, he said, this whole world will fade away, and you will be brought back, and like it said in Masechet Tanet, to see how you've done. Now, the Neshama wonders about this last statement of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that these reprehensible qualities will be transformed into praiseworthy ones. What exactly does that mean? And how does this process work? Now, the Sefel comes up with 10 pairs of emotions, one positive, one negative. I don't even think the ones, he presents them as one positive, one negative. I don't think they're positive and negative. I think they're just emotions. And he explains how negative emotions can be employed in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He says these are a few that come off the top of his head. So here's a list that we'll go through quickly. Joy and grief, fear and hope, courage and timidity, shame and boldness, anger and satisfaction, mercifulness and ruthlessness, pride and humility, love and hate, generosity and miserliness, laziness and diligence. Now, he applies, or he provides an explanation of each and every one of these, but I don't think it's all that difficult to figure out how we can apply love and hate in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The example he brings is love the Kadosh Baruch Hu in everything he does, hate people who are against the Kadosh Baruch Hu and create a Beirut. I think that's kind of superficial, but we can certainly come up with ideas. So he says laziness can be a benefit if it's applied to Gashmiot in this world. Diligence should be with the mitzvot. That having been said, I think that there is a larger, deeper meaning here that I think is worth spending some time on. And that is, how do we focus all of our characteristics and emotions in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu? And this isn't just a Chovot HaLevavot idea, but the Torah tells us that too, right? I mean, we say, V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha, right? You should love God with all your heart. And there are two vets in there. And the question is, why are there two vets? And it says in Masechet Brachot, if you look at source 17, Chayav Adam levarech al hara kishem Hashem mevarech al hatov. This is in the section that's talking about brachot in the Gemara, that says you have to say brachot when good things happen to you and bad things happen to you. Shene'emar, as it says, V'yahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. What does that mean? B'shnei yitzarecha. In both of these elements, right? B'yetzer hatov, u'b'yetzer hara. That you're supposed to use your yetzer hatov in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you're supposed to use the yetzer hara. So if this is true, then we may need to rethink what we have just been told by the Chovot HaLevavot. the Chovot HaLevavot has just told us that we have been given two advisors, one to help us in our tasks and one to trip us up. For the sake of this discussion, like we said before, we'll call the helper the Yetzer HaTov, and we'll call the tripper Yetzer Hara. So first you have to ask yourself the question, why in the world would the Kadosh Baruch who wants us to succeed, who created us to succeed, why would he create an ever-present source of failure for us? It doesn't seem reasonable, and it doesn't seem fair. And if the job of the Yetzer Hara is to trip us up and to give us bad advice, so to speak, how is it that we use him to serve the Kadosh Baruch Hu? So we're supposed to use him simply by ignoring him? Is that how it works? Right? It might require a little bit of a reorientation on our part in terms of how do we understand this advisor. So the Midrash in Breshit Rabbah describes the Yetzer Hara this way. Rabbi Nachman bar Shmuel bar Nachman, b'shem Rav Shmuel bar Nachman Omer. Okay? Those are the sources. Hinei Tov. We're talking about when God said Hinei Tov, and then he said Hinei Tov Me'od. So when he says Hinei Tov, that means he's created the Yetzer HaTov. The Hinei Tov Me'od, when he says it is very good, Ze Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is referred to as very good. V'chi Yatzar Hara Tov Me'od Itma, really? The Yetzer Hara is very good. Ella she'ul lele Yetzer Hara. If we did not have a Yetzer Hara, lo bana adam bayit, no man would ever build a house for themselves. V'lo nasa isha, he would never get married. Lo holid, he would never have children. V'lo nasa v'natan, he would never go into business. V'kein Shlomo Amar, right? And then he brings a quote from Kohelet. Okay, so here the Yetzer Hara is described as the man's ability and drive to create, as his desire for ambition and his desire for growth and acquisition. All of these things are good things if they're controlled and focused. Once these things get out of hand, or once these ambitions and feelings control the individual, it is not very good, it is actually very bad. Unbridled ambition can lead to some very dark places. So recall that the Mishnah in Avot says, Ezehu Gibor HaKovesh Yitzra. Who is truly the strong person? The one who conquers his Yetzer Hara. It doesn't say the one who destroys his Yetzer Hara, right? Perhaps a better translation would not be one who conquers his Yetzer Hara, which means defeating it, but rather one who tames his Yetzer Hara, right? One who maybe an even better word, one who domesticates it, so it can be a positive force. The command, if you recall, to Adam HaRishon, vis-a-vis the earth, it says, Vayavarech otam Elohim, and God blessed them, he and Chava, Vayomer lahem, Elohim, and God said to him, Peru uvu miluat haaretz, right? And it says, V'kivshuha, meaning not you should conquer it, but you should tame it. You should domesticate it. You should use it for your purposes. There's a very famous midrash that the Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Adam HaRishon, understand this is all you're getting. If you destroy this world, there'll be no more world. You're not getting another one, just this one. So if you take these two together, what he's talking about is constructively making use of something. In the case of the earth, it has to do with tilling and building, etc. In the case of our Yetzer Hara, right, it may be that the goal here is not to ignore it, but to bring it to a higher level and make it work for us, right? And make it work for us so that we can serve the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which takes work, I admit. But the tools there are in place, right? The Gemara Masechet Baba Batra, and I'm bringing a lot of Gemaras today, I know, tells us that the Torah and the Yetzer Hara work together. Bara Kadosh Baruch Hu Yetzer Hara, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu created the Yetzer Hara, bara lo Torah tavlin, and he brought Torah as the antidote. So what exactly does that mean? Right? There's another Gemara that says if you're being attacked by the Yetzer Hara, you should drag him into the Beit Medrash. So what's the Yetzer Hara going to do in the Beit Medrash? Probably just disturb other people who are sitting there learning. Right? All this has to do with these two advisors work together. If this one, the Yetzer Tov, is Torah and Seichel, we have to use that to domesticate and tame and focus our baser instincts. Rashi says that the Torah, based on not this Gemara, but based on, it's not important, is transformative, meaning that if we are successful in our task, then the Yetzer Hara is transformed into the Yetzer HaTov. Right? And it is only then, when it is no longer uncontrolled or wild, that it works for us. And this, my friends, may be the biggest challenge and task in this world. The Pachad Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, wrote this chizuk in a response to somebody who was seeking his guidance. I came across it, and it is just pearls. Aval da lecha, Chabibi, sheshorish nishmatecha hu lo hashalva shel Yetzer HaTov. Know, my dear friend, that the root, the purpose of your neshama is not to live in peace with the Yetzer HaTov. Ella, rather, dafka milchamto shel Yetzer Ella rak dafka melachemto shel Yetzer Hara. This is obviously a mistake. That it is your war against the Yetzer Hara. Umimichtavcha, and from your letter, Hayarkar, your dear letter, HaLevavot me'ide kimea edim ki achen lochem ne'eman ata b'tzivaotav shel HaYetzer HaTov. And based on the letter that you wrote me, it is clear as day that you are a valued soldier in the army of the Yetzer HaTov. Ba'anglit omrim, in English they say, lose a battle and win the war. Vadai shehincha nichshal v'omed lihiyot nichshal. Understand, you have failed in the past, and you are going to fail in the future. Ve'ein bezeh mishum peticha pelesatan. Kenai dahara. I'm not wishing this on you. I'm just stating as a fact, right? This is the human condition. Bekama ma'arafot tipol shadud. You are going to fall in many battles. You will be slain in many battles. Aval ani mavtiach lecha. I am going to promise you. Shela alter hefsed kol ha'ma'arafot tetzei min ha'milchama kishezar hanitzachon al roshecha. I guarantee you that the end of the war, if you keep this up, you will be wearing a wreath of victory. V'hateref hachad miparpar ben shinecha. And you will have the prize in your mouth. Lose battles, but win wars. Hachacham mikol adam omer. There's a pasuk in Mishlei. Whenever we see Chacham mikol adam, that's referring to Shlomo HaMelech, usually either in Mishlei or in Kohelet, that there it goes, Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. 7 times a tzaddik will fall and he will get up. V'hatipshim choshvim ki kavanato b'derech rebuta. That it talks about perseverance. that every time a tzaddik falls, he gets up. Rav Hutner says those people are fools. Af al pi shesheva yipol tzaddik mikol makom hukam, right? Aval hachachamim, but truly wise people say, they know it very well, shehakavanah hi, shemihut hakima shel hatzadik hu derech hasheva hanefolot shelo. In order to become a tzaddik, you have to fall 7 times. It's the process of falling and getting up that makes you into a tzaddik. Vayira et kol asher asa v'hinei tov ma'od. And he quotes the pasuk that we just learned in the Medrash, right? And God saw that it was very good. Tov ze yetzer hatov, me'od ze yetzer hara. Tov is the yetzer hatov. Tov me'od is the yetzer hara. So, just in keeping my promise to you that whenever I introduce, how many people here are familiar with the Pafat Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Kotner? Okay. So I made a promise to you that anytime I introduce somebody new, I'm going to at least give you an introduction so you can fit him in. So Rav Hutner was a contemporary Rav who was nifter in the 1980s. He was born in Poland. He learned in the Slobodka Yeshiva. He made his way from there to learn in the Hebron Yeshiva. He was actually there in 1929 when the Jews there were massacred. He left Israel. He went to Europe. There, he got very friendly with Reb Schneerson and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was studying at the University of Berlin, and also with Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, who was learning at the University of Berlin. They were fast friends for life. Those two made it to New York, and he made it to New York as well, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva for a very long time in Yeshiva Chaim Berlin in Brooklyn. And he has a series of Mamarim articles, right? Books and books and books called the Pafat Yitzchak, which this is from. In conclusion, so to conclude this Sha'ar, the Sefer says, what I have expounded in this treatise should suffice for one who chooses the just way, seeks the truth for himself, and desires wisdom for his own sake. May God in his mercy lead us out to the paths of his service. Amen. So, Shkoach, we have finished 3 of the 10, and the next Sha'ar is Sha'ar HaBitachon, which is thought to be and treated like the crown piece of the work, and most of the shiurim and lectures that you're going to hear are based on that particular Sha'ar, and we will pick that up in 2 weeks.